Hi everyone, and welcome to the crime scene sketching video lecture. Let's get started. Now, crime scene sketches are an important documentation technique. A crime scene sketch is like the glue that brings everything together by combining the photos, the notes, and other potential witness statements. Sketches are frequently used in court by witnesses that were on the scene in order to help explain their actions and where they were when certain events happened. And they can help the trier of fact, who is not on the scene, to understand the orientation of photographs that are taken. Now, there are two different types of sketches, a rough sketch and a final sketch. Rough sketches are done at the scene itself, whereas final sketches are done once the investigator leaves. Rough sketches are, well, rough. They have less than straight lines, and they have lots of information provided in not so perfect handwriting. Final sketches, on the other hand, are more polished. They have straight lines, they have a legend, and they're often sized to scale. Final sketches are the ones that are going to be submitted to the court, so these must be professional and accurate. The final sketch will be a reflection of your work product to the judge or the jury, and the quality of this product is likely to influence what they think of your credibility and your work. In order to create this polished final sketch, you must create a high-quality rough sketch while you're at the scene. Now, your textbook documents that final sketches may not be completed until weeks or even months after the crime scene is processed. So it's also really important that the rough sketches that are created at the scene are thorough and they provide enough information to create the final sketch, even if done so a long time forward. Rough sketches should include measurements of the room being drawn, the basic furniture that's present in the room, and information about the relevant evidence and victim positioning. Rough sketches should also include all notes and abbreviations that an investigator makes or uses while at the scene. One of the great things about your textbook is that the authors are not afraid to be honest about real-world conditions. Typically, forensic science books talk about how sketches, rough and final, should be done for every single case. However, in reality, the needed sketch varies. You may not always need to create a final sketch of the scene. However, you should always try to take enough measurements of the scene that you could have that option if need be. Now, if you do complete a final sketch, you should include a header that contains the case information, and this includes the case number, the time, the date, the location, and who you are so that they identify that you're creating the sketch. Final sketches should also include a legend for at least the evidence, if not other objects in the scene that are not easily recognizable to viewers. Final sketches should also either contain an actual scale or the words "not to scale" in order to identify whether or not the measurements within the sketch can be used. You should also include an orientation indicator, like a north arrow, to help pinpoint the geographic reference for the location. Now, within your sketch, you want to include all the furniture, the walls, the fixed objects, and all the evidence that's contained within the scene. Depending on the type of scene, you may or may not need to sketch other areas of the property where the crime occurred. For example, if a murder occurred in the bedroom, you may not need to sketch the kitchen, just the bedroom. But if the investigators find important evidence, like, say, the murder weapon in the kitchen, well, now you need to give the same quality of sketch for the kitchen as you do for the bedroom. The final decision on determining the scope of the sketch should be a collaborative decision between the crime scene investigator and the detective that's in charge of the overall investigation. When creating a sketch, the first thing the investigator needs to determine is what type of sketch they plan to create, and there are four main types of crime scene sketches. The first is called the bird's eye sketch, and this is the most common type of sketch. It provides the viewpoint from down above as if the roof has been removed off the structure or the room. In a bird's eye sketch, furniture frequently appears as rectangles, just like they would if you were looking straight down in a room. The bird's eye sketch is a 2D sketch because the height of objects is not portrayed, only the width and the depth, and it should always include a north indicator. The next type of sketch is called an elevated sketch. Elevated sketches are also 2D like bird's eye sketches, but they show a wall or other vertical surface instead of the floor. For these sketches, height and width are important, but depth is not relevant. Elevated sketches are useful when investigators are trying to document evidence on a vertical surface, like a bloodstain pattern that's on a wall. Now, exploded sketches are a compilation of both floor plan and elevation sketches. Think of an exploded sketch like taking the roof off of a room and then knocking down all the walls flat. This allows investigators to sketch information about height, width, and the depth of objects. But as you can see from this, it can get a little messy in terms of interpreting. Exploded sketches do not always have to include all vertical walls of the scene. For example, here's an exploded sketch that includes a bird's eye sketch of the room with an elevated sketch of a single wall, the one behind the victim. That wall contains potential bullet holes, so they needed to document the vertical measurements. Since the other walls did not contain similar evidence, they were not documented in the same manner. Again, this is a decision that you make at the scene, because if you don't have those measurements, you're never going to be able to do those sketches. Now, 3D sketches allow the investigator to map out the entire crime scene in such a way that the full dimensions of the objects from the scene are easily assessed, as is the relationship between different objects. Now, 3D sketches are often made using computer programs, and so they can be used to create 3D simulations of the crime scene that can be shown to the jury to explain characteristics like bullet trajectories and bloodstain patterns. These typically use more advanced technology, so they may have often a camera on a tripod that does a 360 rotation. So these are not usually manually completed. These are done with a computer program and laser technology. Remember that sketches should be done in conjunction with notes. It's important that the notes are thorough and detailed, and that they are written legibly. Notes lacking any of these three requirements can be an easy target by defense attorneys that are trying to get evidence suppressed. If you can't read your writing correctly, how do they know what you actually did? How do they know they can trust what your report says? Another thing to keep in mind is that if you use abbreviations or acronyms that are not common or standardized, then you want to clarify what those actually mean for your readers, and clarify your terms. For example, we often use the word living room in our house when we have a couch, but a lot of times people have multiple rooms containing couches, or maybe they have multiple living rooms. So in your notes, you need to be specific. When you say living room 1, is that the living space that's attached to the kitchen, or is that the living room that's in the front of the house? You should also document all the times and locations for everything, especially if you have multiple scenes or multiple investigators. All right, well, that completes this lecture. Thanks for watching, everyone.